Hey there, you're listening to Season 3, Episode 9 of We're Just Talking About It. Today, we wrap up our conversation with Sabeeha, an author of a memoir called Threading My Prayer Rug, One Woman's Journey from Pakistani Muslim to American Muslim. In our final conversation with Sabeeha, we ask her if Sharia law is compatible with American values. She has some eye-opening remarks. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Big question I know you probably get a lot and I get, is Sharia compatible with American values? I mean, if you want to unpack Sharia, we just covered that in our last podcast. It's airing right now with a legal scholar. But if you want to hit that a little bit and then discuss the compatibility with American values and laws.
Yeah, well, the quick answer to your question is that it is totally compatible with the American Constitution and the American law. The Sharia, the way I see it, is you have the personal Sharia and then you have the societal Sharia. And in the personal Sharia, my personal Sharia is my belief in God and in prayer, fasting, charity, Hajj, and all the values that all the three faiths embrace, like respecting your parents, taking care of the neighbors, the needy, compassion, all those wonderful things. None of that interferes with the American laws, because this is my belief, my prayer, my fasting is something that is very personal, and no American law says that I cannot get up in the morning and say my morning prayer. So there is religious freedom over here, which enables me to practice my personal Sharia. Then there is the societal Sharia, where we have 6 objectives. You may have covered this, but it's the society's objective to protect life, the intellect, religion, family, property, and human rights. So now let's unpack that. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the American credo. So life will encompass the Sharia objective of protecting life and protecting human rights. Liberty, the American credo, it encompasses the Sharia objective of protecting religion and religious freedom and intellectual pursuit. And the pursuit of happiness, the American credo, encompasses the Sharia objective to enable acquisition of wealth and protect property and protection of family and family values. So all 6 objectives of the societal Sharia are encompassed in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To give this a practical aspect, I will use the example of seat belts and speed limits. This is an American law. This did not exist in 7th century Arabia when the Quran was revealed, right? But the objective of protecting life is what leads to us in this modern day to impose speed limits so that you can protect life and to require seat belts for the same purpose. Likewise, drinking while intoxicated is an American law. There were no drivers and cars in 7th century Arabia, but drinking while intoxicated violates 2 objectives of Sharia. One is protection of life, and the other is protection of the intellect, the mind. Drinking impairs your judgment, and as a consequence, you put your life and the life of others at risk. And therefore, the law of DWI is very much Sharia compliant. And I can go on and on.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it and get into the relationships. What would you say to people who will tell you the opposite? You know, well, you're not supposed to do this in Islam, and that causes problems. You know, and there's all these examples you see on the news. You know, how do you explain when there's confrontations inside a society where one group is trying to do one thing and they claim a religious reasoning for it? What brings this to mind fresh this morning, there's a video out right now of a gentleman on an airplane trying to do his prayers in the aisleway, blocking the bathroom, which generally most people wait till they get off the plane other than go take up space in an aisle, which is rather dangerous on an airplane. But he's blocking the bathroom when he gets done with the prayer, somebody who was angry that who was patiently waiting to get into the bathroom, standing there, he gets up from his prayer and punches him. It's all caught on video. Of course, that's going viral right now. But how do you explain those clashes, and what is that type of misunderstanding of when you just have to do something, or when you can wait and do something in a more private and humble way?
Yeah, so that man who was obstructing the aisle was wrong. There is a lot of flexibility in saying prayer. You can delay your prayer if you're traveling. You can say your prayers while you're sitting in your seat with your seat belt fastened. There is no requirement for you to you have to say your prayers at a particular given time. There are dispensations for travelers, for sick people, and for circumstances that are beyond your control. So this man should have sat in his seat with his seatbelt on and said his prayers in that position. There is no requirement for him to do what he did, particularly if it interferes with safety of the other passengers and the well-being of the other passengers. The other law that has emanated out of Sharia, by the way, is the word of God in the Quran, and from that emanates the law. And that law is that the law of the land overrules everything. The law of the land applies. So if the law of the land, even if it's up in the air, is that you need to keep the aisles free for the flow of passengers, then you need to keep the aisles free of the flow of passengers. Prayer or no prayer. Do your prayer in your seat.
Thanks for...
The man was wrong.
Yeah, thank you for running through that. And that's, we know, tonight on the news, around the world when they show this video, no one is going to explain it in the way you just did. It's going to be somebody who hates Islam explaining, in a horrible way, or somebody who doesn't think there's a problem. They won't bring on an expert. They'll bring on as I like to say,
an Islamophobe.
Somebody who's, just doesn't know what they're talking about, or somebody who wants to defend this guy who's praying and just take it in the extreme other direction. Wow, everybody should make room for that guy. We never get the person in the middle who gives a logical answer.
Yeah, make room for the guy because he's in a conversation with God.
That's a good one. Let's move on, I guess, maybe to some of the lessons of tolerance that we wanted to talk about. How does Islam fit with America's ideals of pluralism? How would you like to talk about that?
Well, one of the objectives of the Sharia is religious tolerance, which translated means that you have to have freedom of religion. You have to have not only tolerance, but you have to embrace people of other faiths. Interfaith marriages is just one example, and that you have to protect religious symbols, and you have to protect the rights of people within their religion, unless they are interfering with the 6 objectives of the Sharia. An example of that is that if you are committing a crime against another person and saying this is within my religious rights, well, no, if that's not within your religious rights. So tolerance here is very much, pluralism and tolerance is very much a part of the Islamic faith. God says in the Quran, there is no compulsion in religion, and you just say to people who don't accept your point of view, to you your religion, to me my religion. So there really is no room for intolerance in the faith.
And I agree that is so fitting with the American value system. We are very much a live and let live kind of country. That's in all our founding documents. Even if it wasn't pertaining to everybody who lived here at the time, and that was the idea, that everybody has their own personal liberty and you shouldn't infringe on it.
And also the separation of church and state. At least in the Sunni tradition, there is a very clear separation of church and state. The ulama or the scholars are there to give an opinion that is non-binding and have no authority in the affairs of the state.
Yep, absolutely. And that's another one that fits perfectly with America. I was talking, mentioned I'd had lunch with the president of ISNA, and that was one of the things he mentioned, to me. He said, I think that what most Muslims that don't live in America don't realize is how important that separation of church and state is in America to Muslims. I mean, there is no state religion in America. So it is a wonderful place to be a Muslim in that sense. You don't have to worry about the government ever telling you you're the wrong type of religion legally. I mean, sure, we've done many things illegally as a government, but that is in our founding.
And I have found that through interfaith dialogue, by focusing on our commonalities, not only have we come to understand, at least the people that my husband and I have touched in our, speaking circuit, is that in addition to raising awareness, we have become advocates and ambassadors for one another, and we have become friends. So that when either one of us is in a tight spot or is being harassed, or there is Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and Muslim registry, travel ban, you name it, we have been there for one another, and we have stood by one another, fought for one another, held one another's hands, comforted each other, and it's just been a very heartwarming experience, that even in difficult times, knowing that the people of other faiths are surrounding you with their love and with their protection.
Yeah, I think that has been very helpful. I do a lot of these type of interfaith talks and meet with different groups. One of the problems I've discussed with other members of interfaith work is too often when we get an audience together to have an interfaith discussion, that audience already agrees with us before we start the discussion. You're sitting in a room with a bunch of people who believe in interfaith tolerance. And so I've been working on trying to turn that on its head, where here I am, a Christian, going out to talk to Christians mostly about Islam. I've been trying to recruit other people to, if you're Jewish, you should be in your synagogue telling other Jewish people to be tolerant of Islam and Christianity. If you're Muslim, you should be in your mosque telling people to be tolerant in very explicit terms, and really get down to the nuts and bolts of everyday life and get into those hard conversations, because it's easy to wave your hand and say, I do that because my religion expects it. So we already know it. I spoke to a rabbi the other day who said, of course we do that. I don't have to do that. My flock knows already to be tolerant. I shouldn't have to tell them. And I thought, well, we still have a lot of intolerance in our country. Somebody's not getting the message. What do you think of that? Just the idea of other religions taking it into their own church, or their own synagogue, their own temple, their own mosque, and having those hard conversations with their own followers, so it's not a stranger talking to them.
Absolutely. It's one thing for me to go in front of an audience and say, I'm a Muslim and it's a wonderful religion, and it takes a whole other dimension when someone of another faith will go up there and say, here's what I can tell you about what I know about the Muslim faith. It just brings so much more credibility, and it legitimizes it. It's much more powerful. I had once approached a speaker who was giving a talk on, if you tell your stories instead of giving facts and figures, you can touch hearts and minds of people, because stories are much more compelling. So if you want to win people over, tell a personal story. So I went up to the microphone and I asked her that, my husband and I are trying to do just that. We go all over the United States giving talks, but we feel that we are preaching to the choir, excuse the cliche, and that only those people invite us who are willing to listen and who are open-minded. So what do? How do we get those who really need to listen to us to invite us? Her response was, they will not invite you, but they will invite me and people like me, referring to herself. So tell us your stories and we will tell your stories to them. And then she said something else. Don't overestimate the open-mindedness of your audience. There are people there who are skeptics, but they came and they listened, and that's a start. So on that note, I then make an appeal to people like, please read my book, Threading My Prayer Rug. Give it as gifts to your friends. Please tell these stories to your friends so that they can get to see what the inside the home of a Muslim person, what it looks like, what do they talk at the dinner table, what are the problems they are having with their children, and know that we are no different, and we have the same aspirations and the same fears and the same worries and the same things that bring us joy.
That is a great ask, and it's not a big ask to learn something about another culture and then share it in your own culture and help spread tolerance.
Yeah, I also think that whereas what you were talking about is a top-down approach, and it works very well because religious leaders have credibility and authority, but we also need a bottoms-up approach from the grassroots, which we are trying to do by having events or sessions or meetings or meetups year-round. It doesn't have to be around a particular religious holiday, but it's like getting together over an interfaith book club or a Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, where we meet once a month and just talk. We have a group called Daughters of Abraham in Dialogue. We pick a subject and just sit and chat, and we don't have a congregation. We don't have a big following. We are just a group of people getting together in living rooms as opposed to big halls, so that we are in an intimate setting and we are personal with one another, and that leads to a walk in the park or a coffee at wherever, so that it develops one-on-one relationships. So one person at a time can also be very powerful.
Oh, I agree. I think it has to be both ways. You've got to get the top to meet the bottom. And I love those small ones as well. I was invited to do a dinner. This group of gentlemen got together every month in a town nearby, 12 guys. They had a dinner and they brought in a guest speaker for every dinner to just talk about a topic they didn't know about. So they asked me to come speak about Islam and just have dinner with them. But, oddly enough, we ate pork loin, so that was kind of funny. But but it was just that kind of small gathering. In this case, a bunch of Christians eating pork and having a beer, talking about Islam, which makes no sense, but it did. Those 12 guys walked away going, "Wow, I never thought about it like that. That's really like you changed my mind." And I had a couple of them come back to me later. "And will you come speak to another group for me?" And so I think you're right. That bottom up stuff is just as important. But we've got to turn that. We've got to turn this around a bit, because we can't keep preaching to the choir and expect change. We've got to keep inviting strangers and skeptics into the room and having a conversation. So you're a part of that. We appreciate you coming on the podcast with us, and we'll let you know when this is going to air. And we'll probably have you back in the future, and maybe you and I can figure out a way to go speak to each other's audiences. So this was wonderful.
I'd like to add one more thing.
Sure.
Okay, so I was asked this question once, which was that what gift do you see in the other faiths that you would like to incorporate in your own life? And I want to share that because I feel that there is so much that we can learn from one another and make part of our lives. So, for example, in the Christian faith, I love the idea, the practice of saying grace at dinner time, at meal time, to thank God for what He's provided. I love the joy that Christmas brings into the house. In the Jewish faith, I think that the Sabbath is such a sensible idea, to stop once a week and say, today I'm going to rest. I like their ritual of the Simchat Torah, which is to read the Torah the entire year and finish it in the fall. In the Hindu tradition, I love the music of temples, and I'd like to see the Muslims bring more music into their lives. And I like yoga. And then finally, in the Buddhist tradition, I think that meditation is a gift that I treasure, its ability to still and quiet us. So there's so much that we can incorporate from the other faiths and bring our communities together.
I think that's a great exercise too, is to go through and examine other faiths and say what you enjoy or respect about them and would maybe like to see in your own. I think that's just a great way to get a conversation started about other religions and open yourself up to what other religions have to offer.
Yeah, that's absolutely agree. I just finished reading Holy Envy, which is the book by a Protestant minister who teaches it world religion courses, and she outlines in that short book, all the things that she would love to have taken from, and she has taken from other religions into her own life, you kind of just summarized her whole book, but she learned that by studying other religions, and she took little pieces into her life. I think that's a great way to think about it. Really appreciate you coming on. We look forward to just keeping in touch with you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
And on that note, we will wrap things up with Sabeeha. This will also be our final episode of 2019. We can't believe we are headed into 2020. We are wishing you all a great end to 2019 and a happy new year. We will see you in 2020.